Coming up on the Sky News Daily with me, Neil Patterson. Cannabis, QR codes and parcels in the post. A Sky News investigation reveals how dealers are selling their wares through stickers on bus stops. So, who's behind the operation? Buying drugs via the internet is nothing new. The dark web has long been home to dealers wishing to avoid detection. But now, for whatever reason, they're operating in plain sight. QR codes on stickers left in public places around the country direct people to a normal, ordinary, unhidden website where they can place their order. Soon after, the cannabis arrives in the post. They've even got customer support. OK, so let's speak to a couple of the members of the team at Sky that produced this bit of journalism. Tom Cheshire, you'll already know, our data and forensics correspondent. Good to see you, Tom.
Good to be here.
But let me introduce you to Sam Doak, our OSINT, our open source intelligence producer. Sam, good to have you on.
Good to be on, yeah.
You might want to start by explaining exactly what an open source intelligence producer does and how you've kind of been part of this team.
Yeah, so my job is basically kind of a mix of verifying stuff like on the day for the newsroom, but we also help with longer term investigative projects. And that's using open sources of data, so social media, sometimes satellite imagery. In this case, like looking at the back ends of websites and using that kind of data. About
which a lot more later. But let's start at the very beginning, shall we, Tom? And it all starts with a sticker.
Yeah, in really plain sight, like a lot of good stories. It's there in front of lots of people. And you might have seen it yourself walking around town. Not all for the same site, but a sticker often on a lamppost, and it's got a QR code. And that's perhaps the newer sort of part of it. You just scan it. We all got familiar with QR codes from the pandemic, I think. You scan it and it takes you to a site which is selling cannabis online. I think for all of this, having covered these sorts of stories before, I used to be a technology correspondent. We talk about the dark web and how people could go on the Silk Road and order this stuff. And it was just like, ordering online from famous online retailers. Same sort of thing here with all those customer reviews, next day delivery. But this is on the open web. This is, really accessible to anyone.
So just explain exactly what happens when I put my mobile phone up to this QR code.
Straight to this site. The site has changed slightly, but you'll get that, and it's presented very much like a shop front where you'd buy everything. It's got, pretty strong branding. You go down, you can see all the products by category, prices, customer reviews again. So you do see people, with recent reviews saying, I'm very happy with the service, exactly as ordered. And, from the people we spoke to, they were actually fulfilling that service too. This wasn't, just... There's a lot of concern around these sites, and it's justified concern about whether you are getting what you're getting. In the instances we spoke to, this was, a pretty well-run business.
So, Sam, just explain your kind of involvement in here. You've got a QR code in front of you. I mean, you've got access to a website. What do you then do?
Yeah, so one of the first things that we usually do, and it doesn't usually turn up much, is to check the source code of the website, and that's just basically the back end of how everything works. In this instance, they had a string of bank details that if you look at the code, it's clear that at checkout, it pulls up one random set of bank details from this list to send funds to. So from that, we're able to kind of get all of the bank details at once that they use.
And just in terms of the stickers themselves, where are they? I mean, one lamppost in one town is one thing, but these are rather more broadly spread.
Yeah, all over the place. Like, right up and down the country. When I was talking to my dad about this story, he sent me a picture of one outside our house.
Outside your house where?
In Glasgow.
We're not afraid to use anyone for stories. Sam's parents involved, but yeah, all around the country. And especially it seems to be around schools quite a lot, actually. It seems to be a thing. That might be accidental, it might be deliberate, but they're definitely having it. Now, some councils are taking them down. You see them scrub, but then it's quite easy to go, obviously, and just stick them back up. Some of the problem with this is whose job is this? Should councils be taking this down? Should police be taking this down? Should the site be taken down? It seems to be falling between the cracks at the moment.
How much do we then know, guys, about who's actually using this website, the consumer base?
Quite. I mean, it's sort of is marketed for everyone. We've spoken to people as part of the story who have used it, and very from students to, we spoke to one man in sort of the Midlands who's a bit older and was using it for chronic pain relief. Had never used drugs before, actually used to be a prison officer. So spent his whole life, as he told us, trying to get drugs off people instead. But because of his chronic pain, he was looking for different methods of dealing with that. He drove into town one day, shuffling along, as he said, saw this sticker, did exactly that same thing, just scanned it with his phone, ordered it online. The next day, this smelly brick thumps on his door. He says he was very nervous about it. He's never done anything like this. He felt like Al Capone, basically, sort of doing it. But it was exactly, again, as advertised, and so he used that for a bit before moving on to other things. But I think that's interesting because this man, he wasn't going to buy drugs before. He never would have sort of gone down the street or tried to do it in the sort of perhaps what is now an old school way, but obviously still exists too. But because of the convenience of this, because it was right in his face, he was able to do that and do something he wouldn't otherwise have done.
Because Sam, let's be honest about this. We've covered it on the podcast in the past. The idea that you can order drugs via the internet, we've been reporting on in the past, but it's been the dark web up until now that we've been focusing on.
Yeah, and like the kind of move to like the clear web, it kind of really like lowers the barrier for entry. Like the darknet's not hard to get onto, but it's much easier and like much less, frankly, intimidating for most people just to scan a QR code and kind of treat it like you would Amazon or something.
I think that's because you're good at the dark. I think there's still a lot of sort of barriers to entry for most people. I agree. Like once you're on it, it's fine. But
I can show you how.
Yeah. But for most people, I think that they're not quite there. This, like I say, really opens it up to a whole new swathe of people.
Okay, so Sam, we know a little bit at this stage in the investigation about the payment process. How do we then go about investigating who's actually responsible for these sites, these stickers?
Yeah, so luckily for us, like a lot of the some of the bank details were tied to individuals, so we had names, but kind of most helpfully in this case, a lot of them were tied to companies. Obviously, you can't take companies' house data at complete face value, but we cross-referenced with like finding the people on social media, seeing that they kind of know each other, which would kind of lend credence to this not being like kind of like random people's details being used.
And in terms of those companies, what did we learn about them?
Well, they were interesting. Like some of them had like no presence aside from company's house, but quite a few of them would, if you search the names, it would lead you to these quite junky looking e-commerce websites. So jewelry, phone cases, things like that. What we found later on is that a few of the companies were just using copy and pastes of the same, we believe, fake websites. So like the same backstory of, I think it was like 3 best friends decided to create a phone case company together. We found that website 3 times on 3 different companies.
So Tom, in terms of the individuals behind this, we're starting to get a little bit closer to those who are organising it, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly that. And that's, again, thanks to Sam's insight on this, especially those bank details, which a lot of sites don't have this. But then when you match that with the company's house addresses, those webs, and you can go on Facebook and see the connections between them. You can see how they interact, and especially with those addresses, which ones are held in common in that social graph, if you like. That is a lot to go on. And that's the sort of combination when this team, the data and forensics team, does it really, really well, is combining that sort of digital investigation with on-the-ground reporting.
Getting out there and knocking on doors.
Yeah, it's the old-fashioned sort of stuff.
Okay, so you've got an address, you've got an idea of who might be there, 3 individuals. Tell me what happened next.
Yeah, so then we go knock on that door. Went in there, the first address, knocked on it. We had a former flatmate confirm they used to be there, and actually we're currently in Lithuania on holiday with a one-way ticket, open-ended. So that didn't get as much further. Went and knocked on another, couldn't speak to the homeowner who we're interested to speak to, but left a number. And then, so I was quite surprised to get the call, actually, after we'd left the premises saying, yep, this is my house. I told them about the business. Now, this person isn't listed on the business themselves. It's properties they own, which were used by these people. So they were very surprised to, hear Sky News was coming around. We asked questions and said, we'd love to talk about this. And so went back with their permission to talk about this.
I know it's nothing illegal in my houses.
Nothing. And you don't think
Definitely.
that they might be doing that perhaps secretly, or because their names are on these sites?
I can't say on behalf of them, but as far as I know, it's nothing in my houses.
And so at that point, we did have a conversation with that person who said, confirmed the names again of these people, these Lithuanian nationals who were living there, said they were now out of the country, but said that they had no idea that anything was being run from those addresses in terms of this website.
But what did we find out about those 3 individuals?
What we all knew about them was that they were Lithuanian nationals. They were known to each other. The Lithuanian aspect is significant in terms of, when we went to speak to experts about this too, some people were surprised around. They're sort of thinking, is this a technical side of things? Are they just making the website? Or is this actually, more than that. And again, thanks to Sam's work, I think we've got good reason to sort of suspect a wider network behind this of organised crime. Again, those individuals, they're not in the UK necessarily.
Sam, do we have any idea about how much money is being made through these sites?
Yeah, so between the end of December and start of March, one of the websites made, I think it was like close to like $100,000 US. The other one made significantly less, I think around like 9,000. But that's only, that's just a snapshot of the cryptocurrency transactions too.
So this isn't even the real cash that's flowing through their accounts. This is the crypto.
Like most people pay by bank. So this is the crypto that you can monitor. But those bank details, which are so useful in investigation, is how most people will pay. Do
we have any idea then of this, the overall scale of this operation, Sam?
No, aside from what's 3 websites and like quite substantial amounts of cryptocurrency, it's clearly from the amount of revenue they're taking in, then it's not just like a couple people posting in the hush, just with the volumes of drugs being sold. But aside from that, we don't know the scale.
The other thing that Sam did, which I thought was pretty genius, was part of the further confirmation before we went to knock on those doors, was establishing the packages were actually being sent from that area.
So they have a very strong online presence, and they do respond to customer complaints. And in an argument with a complaining customer, they provided the tracking numbers that the Royal Mail used to basically prove that the packages were delivered. We stuck those through the Royal Mail's online portal and saw that they went through a sorting centre in the area.
I mean, that's very, very clever indeed. But I suppose that the other aspect of being able to, not ring up customer services, but at least get a response from an email address, is this all feels incredibly normalised. It all feels very mainstream. They're acting as if they are a legitimate business.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main things we realised is there was almost like minimal kind of attention to like security on their end. Like if they'd taken maybe 2 or 3 more steps, this would be much more difficult to work out any of this.
Is that because we think that this criminal network are incredibly sophisticated, or do we think it is just a general lack of pressure from law enforcement? They seem to be acting with impunity.
If Sam is able to find out a lot of this stuff, if we're able to go physically and knock on those doors, why aren't police doing something similar? Is it because there's too much demand? Have they not been able to do it themselves? Do they need a higher evidential standard? All these questions. But when we went to sort of the Met Police, they referred us to someone else, who referred us to someone else, who referred us to someone else. And then that question of where councils come in as well. So I don't know if it's just too low priority at the moment, or perhaps they are watching these sort of sites, but it feels like you can just sort of do this in broad daylight.
We've already mentioned the fact that it seems all very normal, but actually, there are large parts of the world now in which websites such as this, dealing very specifically in cannabis, are legal, the United States amongst them.
Yeah, no, and like if you look at the website, it does have that kind of branding that you would kind of associate more with like one of these stores in, like, say, California, where this is legal. It looks like a legal product when you look at it.
So, what, if anything, are the police doing about this?
I mean, that was a pregnant pause. I'm not sure. The NCAA told us that they work. They're always working, especially and they think technology companies should be doing more as well in terms of removing stuff. But a lot of police work, is necessarily behind the scenes. So perhaps there is more going on than we think about. We've reported on this. We've, put out our report today. We've spoken to police about this already. We've, said this is the website. That website is still going on. It's made some changes. It now has an age verification. One of the questions we put to them.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. There's an age verification on a website selling cannabis.
Well, they added it after we asked if they had any steps.
Yeah. So now you have to be able
to. So they have some moral compass when it comes to this stuff. Is it?
I mean, it's not going to stop many, because it's a yes/no question. But that's a new thing. That might have been planned before we started asking those questions. But that has changed. Anyway, the website is still there. They don't seem too bothered about it. There's been no sort of blocking action or anything like that from the authority side of things or from the tech company side of things. It seems pretty, serene about the whole thing, just sailing on quite happily. And
they're by no means the only player working in this sphere.
No. There are plenty of other sites doing the same thing. Like in the UK, if you look at I think it's Trustpilot, you can see they compare the different ones.
Trustpilot, of course, is a website where you can go to find out if an online brand will get you your stuff on time and all the rest of it. How on earth is a cannabis vendor operating online on Trustpilot.
I'm not sure if those entries are like manually checked, but when we looked at reviews for one of the websites we were looking at, it had suggested other similar sites, and they were all doing the same thing.
Are we closer to a point now than we have ever been of just saying, do you know what? It's time to bite the bullet, decriminalise and move this into the public domain? Because if this is happening on this scale with this level of ease and with apparently very little kind of police intervention, it does seem like we're through the looking glass already.
Sites like this are a real glimpse of what it might look like, which helps those sorts of debates. What would a legal cannabis market look like in the UK? It would look exactly like this site. It would have those reviews. It would have that ease of service. It would probably be a bit cheaper as a result because they're not sort of doing any laws. But a lot of people would argue, and if you look at public opinion around this, around politicians as well, I think the debate has moved on from this, partly because of sites like this saying, look, this is how it would look. And then, of course, as you mentioned, the example of other countries where they've done this already. And again, the product in terms of the website looks very similar to what we're seeing here in the UK on these stickers.
Tom, Sam, thanks very much indeed. Good to have you on the podcast.
Thanks.
Cheers.
For even more on Sam and Tom's investigation, just head to the website, skynews.com, and do make sure to give us a follow if you've enjoyed what you hear. Should be just a click away wherever you found this one. The Sky News Daily is back again tomorrow.
The first 100 days might be over, but President Trump is showing no signs of slowing down.
America will soon be greater than ever before.
So we're continuing to follow every twist and turn of this remarkable presidency.
And trying to make sense of what it all means for the US and for the rest of the world.
So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Malta Kellner.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Sky News Trump 100, wherever you get your podcasts.